Hi, this is Erik Kleinsmith, and you're watching the Break It Down Show.
We're breaking news here, man. This is awesome. I love it. So first off, for everybody who doesn't know, Erik Kleinsmith was my commander in Bosnia. I always say this because it's such a neat thing that 25 years ago, you were the boss man, and I was running around doing what we call Muddy Boots collection, and you were trying to herd all these cats and all these insane people.
Yep.
And all you've done since that, like, you commanded a CI company in combat, and not many people get to do that.
But
and that's nothing.
150 of you cats.
150, and by cats, he means it too. People get drunk, people get in fights. On my team, I saw one human choke another human while drunk.
Yeah. What's interesting is we shared a battalion with the long range reconnaissance guys, the LURS guys. Yeah. And these guys were airborne infantry, and they were busting guys for rank or drunk, all the time. I never did a single judicial punishment or any chapter of anyone while I was in command, because they were all CI and interrogators and and intel folks. So when finally one of the LURS guys got busted, so the commander made myself and the other company commander go over to the legal office. He made me go with them because I've never talked to the lawyer yet, and I never learned that part of company command of exacting non-judicial punishment on soldiers. So I showed up at the JAG office, and he's like, "Hey, Dennis, come on in. Who is this guy?" He goes, "This is the other company commander." He's like, "Who the hell are you?" That was the difference.
Let's not bury the lead anymore. Who the heck was the Zodiac Killer?
Gotcha. Zodiac Killer was a guy named Gary F. Poste. And
what's up with Gary's name? Gary Francis making news in the 60s.
Well, it's Gary Poste was the entire case came to us while I was at American Military University, which as of today I am no longer with. But we had we were working the DB Cooper case for at least 10 years. And we've gotten up to the point where we had identified that we're just in the final production phase of a 5-part series coming out on a premium streaming service. So we started, taking in other cases. Folks were coming to us. Well, this was brought to us by one of the part-time faculty members, Jennifer Buchholz, who was on your show. We did a show with her.
Fellow CI agent. Yeah,
right.
Jennifer's awesome.
Right, and she, in her crime work, she had been approached by a source. We're going with Dale right now, who had been working this case and couldn't get anybody to listen to him, and from when he was tipped off, and one of the things that had got him to believe in Poste being the killer is he was told that in order the cipher to break the Zodiac letters, the coded letters, was his name, his full name, Gary Francis Poste. And so we took a look at that. The guy had drawn up all of his paperwork. He went to Jennifer. Jennifer came to the university, and the university folks were immediately like, "Haven't you talked to Erik? He's been working Cooper case for 10 years."
Right.
And so Jennifer and I met, got to know each other, shared the case, and then I sent that over to our team lead, Tom Colbert, out where you are in California. Yeah. That's when, and again, we were incredibly skeptical when we looked at it. And that's the tough part of doing a cold case, is the methodology and how you have to approach them, which is different than an active case. And so we started taking the name, looking at it, and then we even sent it over. We had a Vietnam vet era code breaker that we were using on the Cooper case, and we sent over the letters with the possibilities, like, is this is his name actually the cipher? And Jennifer took a look at it, and she started trying to break it with her own skills. And then we between the two of them, he came back to us and goes, "Yep, I can verify. I can pretty much crack all these codes using his full name as the cipher. It'll be difficult. It's going to take me a long time to do it, but that's fantastic." So that gave us the first hit that okay, here's our first indicator. Now you can't just have one; you have to have multiple. So we started looking into the source itself, and it was some very close family members of Gary Poste that had realized growing up with him and in his household that he was probably the guy. And it was, as they were young children, they had no idea. And this was, again, the neighbor across the street who he babysat for the daughter, and he was taking her out into the woods, teaching her survival skills, that kind of thing. At the same time, the other guy, we're just calling him Will for now. He was looking more and more into it, and so once Gary had passed away in 2018, we had other pieces of information rolling in. So we had indicated that he had owned these specific types of boots that had been used, and these were left at several of the crime scenes. They were Air Force wing walker boots used by Air Force mechanic, which is what he did. And so one of our sources was like, not only does he have the boots, I think they're still around someplace.
That's incredible.
So yeah, and then we got into they had access to the same source had access to his dark room where he published or he printed photos and things like that. Your old fashioned dark room, and it had several photos of him. One of the key ones was it was a shadow of him wearing a hood next to a stump that had been used as a marker for one of the crimes, and the shadow was a square hood. So it was another small piece that was put into place. Then we had as a second piece was the location where he probably or possibly had buried some of the weapons that he had used. He had used a 9mm Luger and at least one or two 22 caliber pistols for his attacks. And the source that we're talking about, Will, said he was present when he buried it up in out in the wilderness, but it is so remote right now. It's a more than a day's hike from the nearest drop off point by vehicle. Right. Or if you take and if you're able to get a bird, you can fly up there relatively quick. But it's you got to do all that coordination. And so
let me ask a couple questions because and just everybody knows Erik is part of a team called the Casebreakers. You can go to casebreakers.com and you'll find a lot of what's that?
.org.
Sorry, casebreakers.org. And these guys break cases. They broke the DB Cooper case, talking about Richard Rackstraw. There's an episode of that. I'll put that link up right here. If you look on the screen, you can see that. That's on my channel right there. Yep. There's a lot of information about this. And I come from the hometown where one of the murders happened, and about a mile, as the crow flies, if even that, there's a second murder. And these are late in the 60s. And so this has meant a lot to my hometown, Benicia and Vallejo next door, because the guy that we thought was killing people lived there. So this is a pretty big deal in general around the Bay Area. But also this case, Erik, has fascinated people. And Gray Smith did a great job in laying a lot of this stuff out. So a lot of it we know because he kind of put a lot of the pieces together.
Yes.
He also fingered the wrong guy. And screwed that guy's a weirdo, screwed up his life though forever.
Well, the thing is this is less of a cold case and more of a historical case at this point. And that's the thing, is that the folks that we've been looking at, they're not even him. And so, when our source came to, again, it was our primary source, came to the reporter, Dale. He came to Jennifer. Jennifer came to me. I went over to Tom. So the case got the case and then all the evidence that he had assembled so far had been passed from one person to another. Well, we're all on the same team now, and so we've all pulled ourselves together. But but the thing is over the years, this guy, and this is why we're calling him the last victim. Is the last victim is his family members and his that are now having to come to grips with the fact that this figure as a father figure or even ahead of a posse of several young disaffected youths from the 60s and 70s and even through the 80s and 90s, where he had taken these folks under his wing. And what's interesting to us is that when he married, the killing stopped. So these were, again, as he was single. So when he married and got into a different lifestyle, but again, it's just he's destroyed lives all through his life. And that includes the police investigators and the reporters that became so obsessed with solving this, and the push to have justice for family members and justice for the victims was such a driving force that it ended up destroying, affecting folks left and right and destroying some of that. So, so we've been able to get to the point where, again, we're looking at putting together a group to go up into the wilderness to recover these weapons. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of coordination, and then it's going to take some support. But the other thing is the DNA. And from the different crime scenes that there was DNA left at different areas. We also have Gary Poste DNA from when he was arrested for domestic dispute in late in his life. And so that when now that DNA technology has been around for some time, we do have his DNA. And so what we're looking for is a comparison between his DNA and the crime scene to help validate that. Or, and that's the thing, is like we're not wishing it is this person. We're looking to validate the case and solve it. And so we have all these pieces of evidence, including we know the location of where these weapons are buried. It's just, again, it's very inaccessible, difficult to get to. I'll never reveal,
because there's some questions here in the feed about bona fides, right? So let's cover some of this.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, and because it's important, we have to understand. Like, a lot of people have claimed this over the years.
Yeah.
So things that have changed. The code is broken. You guys use Poste's name to do that.
Right.
We have what we believe to be a location for these weapons, and like you say, the Sierras is not an easily accessible area. And just for people who don't know, there are places where you can only access it from a helicopter because it's just too rugged, too wooded, and it's just it's impossible to get to. And then if it's the wrong season, this is not just something that's easy. And Erik, you'll help me out with this. The police aren't super excited about you guys breaking this case on them.
Well, and the police are in kind of a quandary themselves, because, again, over the last 50 years, they've been, whoever has DNA, and there's a potential for DNA down at Riverside with the murder of Sherry Jo Bates in 1966. They have DNA from that, or they have, hair fibers and skin fibers underneath her nails. They've been pounded by people saying, I got the name. This is the killer. And it's just like, God, another one, the same thing with, even within the media or, any kind of streaming services, like they get proposals like, I know who the DNA killer, let me do a documentary on it. It's like, they get one of those a year.
Right.
And so this is just, we're just, once you add us into the entire deluge of folks that are amateur crime solvers and things like that, it does not make sense. And so for the law enforcement, it's really, and it's totally understandable. It's you can see it as a kind of a headache. And, by having us, having our team go forward, one of the reasons why we did is because we have reached an impasse where we just, there's really no way we can get more information on this case. We can get some more peripheral data and other evidence, but it really comes down to two things: the ballistics match, which, again, we need support to go up there and get these things, and then the DNA. And
ballistics match. Let me stop you right there. And again, this area is highly inaccessible. What you described, and I looked on the map, I'll go to the basic area. I'm from California. You need a sheriff and his helicopter to get to this place, most likely. I'm guessing. Go ahead.
And that's the thing. It's just, we had put together a team to go up there, but at the age that these guys were, even though they were training for it, a 12+ hour hike up into the Sierra Nevada mountains is, you're not doing that in your 50s and 60s and 70s, and so that's, and again, even on the way up, one of the guys were injured when we tried to go up there in late August. So that's, that became an issue. So it's like, look, we're not getting up there unless we get some air support to do that with. Again, but again, for law enforcement, they've been pounded on for the years so much. They're now at the point where, and I even had a source of mine tell me, just said, look, it's great. Basically come down to, you need to solve the case before we'll provide you the evidence you need to solve the case unbelievably before we'll provide the evidence to help solve the case.
Right.
And that's really, what it's come down to.
So what are your doubts then remaining on the case? And we got, again, a lot of questions in the feed, and it's all about, like, we've heard this before, not even 6 months ago. I've solved the case. I saw the story, right?
Well, the story earlier was that they had broken the final, there was a group of cryptologists that had broken the one of the final letters. And they and that was, probably, we believe that was probably what they were able to do that. But again, the reason why they were able to break it, even after they broke it, he didn't really have anything in there from what they had broken. But the key to our piece was when our code breakers took a look at it, he basically signed his name to every letter because his using his name as a cipher. And that's again what hit us the most was, okay, that's like, we're not even going to touch this case unless we have something like that. Well, boom, that's the first thing that jumped out. And so as we started piecing these other things together, it comes down to, again, DNA and the ballistics, and it's not like we can even just really go up into the mountains and go grab it, because then you got a chain of custody issue you have to worry about.
Yeah, that's
right. It's just like, wait a minute, where did these guys get this?
Right.
That's
a great point.
So there's a lot of things that you just can't go, and that's a good thing about the 40 plus people we have on our team. Everybody is a professional. It's not, we're not a bunch of yahoos trying to make things up as we go. And it's just, it's just that kind of thing. So,
yeah, there's dozens of you, and you're all professionals. I mean, you were the guy that found the 9/11 terrorists before 9/11. You went before Congress and testified to this fact, and there is no doubt about that. I mean, you know how to do analysis.
Yeah. Well,
Jen Buchholz, trained counterintelligence agent. How many cops and sheriff deputies do you guys? I mean, you guys aren't half-assing this.
We have former FBI. We have we have cryptologists. We have forensics and sociologists from a couple of universities. I mean, it's an assemblage of academics, of former law enforcement, former investigators, and then Jen and I are the two intel folks that we put our skills in terms of intelligence analysis and counterintelligence into it, and that's that rounds out. Plus, and again, but all the credit really goes to Tom Colbert. He's the glue that's been holding all of this together to include the Cooper case for 10 years plus.
Right.
So it's,
Tom Colbert has been on the show too. I'll put that link in the show notes.
Yeah.
Let's spend a little bit more time on bona fides, because this is, again, we have to spend time on this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of evidence. He wrote letters. He licked envelopes. He licked stamps.
Yep.
But these are also, for the most part, I think these are all still open cases. And it turns out City of San Francisco working on Paul Stein, but also working on hundreds of other cases.
Yeah. That's the
Benicia PD, Vallejo PD, same thing. These guys are busy folks that can't just drop what they're doing.
Right. And that's the other thing. There are thousands of cold cases that are actual, cold cases, not these that have gotten to the point where it's more of a holy grail and down to the point where it's gotten into mythology. So there's these police departments and investigators, they're inundated with their regular work of cold cases. Whereas, this one, it's, we're doing it because it's within our grasp. I mean, we wouldn't spend all the time and resources if we thought we were just wasting our time. And we're not looking for, I haven't been paid a dime. That's not the reason why any of us are doing that either.
Let's talk about Larry's comment here, talking about the inculcation that Poste was doing with his posse, and let's talk about the posse in general. Yeah,
it's that's part of the things that he had, is he was very manipulative over the people, his family members and his friends and immediate friends of his family members, and so as he married and he was basically presented with adolescents who had no father figures in their lives. He took them under the wing and taught them the kind of things that you needed to do to survive in the wilderness, to go up into the mountains. He taught them how to hunt, how to cache your deer, hang it up in the tree so that the bears can't get it, how to cache weapons in case the proverbial balloon goes up and we have to turn into survivalists. And so he that's what he did later in life. And so we even have photos of him up into the wilderness sitting with his posse, teaching them, a lesson or talking to them. That was where he got his his father figure guidance from. But in a strange sense, though, is also from a very narcissistic standpoint. That's part of what kept him, fueled the rest of his life as well.
Again, the comments are great, man. I'm trying to get to all these things. You guys,
I know they're great coming in. Excellent.
What's Gary's background in the military? Obviously there's a lot of military skills used.
Right.
Your points on the compass radians are used, and all this other stuff.
He had the basic training, but he was an Air Force aircraft mechanic. So he's. He was in the locale. He was in the areas where all the murders occurred. We'd done a geo reference to make sure. We even found a location 15 minutes from the Riverside killing that he had frequented.
Wait,
down
15
there.
minutes away?
What's that?
So you guys can put him in Riverside regularly. This wasn't like a drive down, kill, and leave.
He may have, but he may have been able to do it on the auspice of going to where this other location. I think it was either a doctor's office or something like that. It escapes me right now. But again, he's only been tagged for 5 murders. We think that there were several more. And then that's, the Riverside police had come back and just said, no, we've definite that we think it was a local person, not this guy. And one of the reasons I think it is because one of the letters that was mailed to the police after the murder that contained information about it was mailed from Riverside. That's not out of the realm that he could have done that as well for us either. So it's,
the murder that Kleinsmith puts forward that happens even before that, but on a beach, and then he lists 50 plus people. What are your thoughts? Right.
We looked at all of them and they all fit the MO. They all fit, there were pieces that tied them together. The tough part was there's, it's all scant pieces. So you really can't say, okay, this is enough circumstantial evidence to say he was exactly the one person for all of these. Besides the one where you actually had your witnesses, the lake murders, where the male survived and the female did not. I can't remember their names.
Lake Benicia.
What's that?
Lake Benicia.
Yes. Oh yeah. So he's, they drew his sketch out. Like, this is him in the hood, and then this was the other. That was the other part, was the scar on his forehead. That was a prominent piece, and that was a big piece to law enforcement when we first started talking to them, because it's like, look, you got a scar on this guy's forehead from an accident he had incurred while an auto accident. You have pictures of him with the scar, and then the scar over his right eye and across his forehead throughout his life in photos and in the police sketches. So that was, again, a second piece. That was the second piece after we started looking at the letters. So it was this, again, it's like all of these pieces that had lined up, to connect the dots. I hate saying that word, but that's, as you started putting those together, now we're down to the final pieces of, it's the DNA, and let's go recover these weapons.
Let me back up for everybody who's new into the show here. Gary Francis Poste has been identified by the Casebreakers. Go to casebreakers.org to read more about it. They are submitting this stuff to Riverside PD, SFPD, these other police departments who have the evidence, so it can be corroborated in terms of DNA and these other things. This is not a simple process. They get approached by this all the time. Erik's discussed this earlier in the episode. They also have the potential locations of a weapons cache for the weapons used in some of these murders. And again, this is a process. There's chain of custody things. There's access. One of the questions that came through, Erik, and maybe you can help us understand this. How did Zodiac get up there? If it's so hard to get to, how did he get up there? Was that area more wooded back then? You said Will is the code name for his posse member? Yeah, for one of his posse members.
Right. Again, this guy was a survivalist, so he routinely was out doing that. I mean, that's his is almost his second life of living as a survivalist and then moving on. So
There's a great story about the Sierra, just for people to understand who aren't from California. There was a really, really bad snowstorm, and there was a father and his son hunter team, and they were up in the hills, and I believe they were from Sacramento. Okay. And the sheriff's department up there is like, hey, we're going to try to find those guys. We know they're trapped. And the wife's like, oh, come on. Those guys are fine.
Yeah.
And the sheriff, they're like, no, we got to go find them. And she's like, seriously, they're fine. And then, once the storm clears, they come down in the mountain. They're like, yeah, we were fine. Because this is something that people in the Sierra, like California is full of a bunch of lunatics on the left and on the right. And some of them are survivalists who do go up into those mountains. They don't want help. And, this is an actual thing. And the area has ebbed and flowed in terms of forestation. So it can be a completely different landscape than it was 50, 60 years ago. And keep in mind, this guy's trying to hide this stuff in a way that no one else can find it. So he's not trying to be overly obvious. Did he leave anything? And trophies was a question before. Anything like a trophy or any kind of slip ups where ego and insanity got in the way and put the finger on him?
There's a couple of small pieces. I mean, one of the things he did is he did buy 22 pistols for his posse members, to include the girl that he babysat. As he was bringing her up almost 5 times a week to teach her how to shoot out in the wilderness. So as he was watching over her. But one of the things when one of the posse members, Will, got to the age where he finally realized that this guy could probably be the Zodiac Killer, he asked him about it, and he got a very twisty, non-committal answer. But then within the next day or so, he saw a book written about the Zodiac Killer left on his front porch from him, saying this is a good read. And so that was a piece that we had gotten. And I think it was at that moment when he realized, and again, he came forward himself to find our lead tip-off, Dale, to bring that to him. And in fact, he even went to some of the reporters, and Dale had gone to some law enforcement, and they both rebuffed him and just said, look, we get this all the time. You guys are, we really don't have time to even deal with you guys. So but again, when they came to them, they didn't have, you have to have more of a complete package. You just can't come in there and say, I think I know this from a dream. Or I think I have a hunch. Nobody's going to spend time and resources on a case like this investigating a hunch.
There's egos involved in this too. There's another case I want to ask you about. I don't want to get off topic because we're on topic here with the Zodiac Killer. But Tim Hennis tried 3 times for the same crime in Leavenworth right now, and he's like, "Hey, I didn't do it." And there's significant evidence that he didn't kill. He's a triple homicide, mom and 2 daughters, left the little baby alone, and there's the killer's DNA is under the mom's fingernails, and the Army will not test it to exonerate Tim Hennis, who's in jail for the rest of his life. Right. So when we talk about this, there's ego, there's legal process. And so these things do take time. I'm not trying to justify the things, but you guys are making a case to the Riverside PD, who has heard this over and over again.
Yeah.
But when you think about that, there is evidence right there, and the Army is saying we don't have a budget for that. How can you not have you got a budget to keep the guy incarcerated for the rest of his life? Why don't these claims? What does it take to get Riverside? I'm not trying to hammer on Riverside, but what does it take to get Riverside to make this move? What do they want to see from you guys? And then is ego in the way?
I think it's if we give in to this and it's a waste of time, then we're going to open ourselves to wasting our time on all kinds of things. I can sympathize with every single law enforcement agency or organization that's been touched by this over the years, to include even Lake Tahoe.
We got to talk about Donald Lass for sure.
Yeah. Who has never been found, by the way, but there has been indicators. And again, when you look at the indicators they left on that, they lead back to that he cached the body, just like he did with, showed his posse how to do the same thing.
Now, is that area has been highly developed since then. Yeah. And under a slab of cement.
Yeah, I mean, he left a postcard that says, "Look between the pines," and there's been a debate over was it one tree, was it several trees, was it a hole in a tree? There's all kinds of different theories to that. But the one thing we did post was that, or did place, is we've got evidence that he was up at the location before, and that he actually knew her or knew who she was beforehand. So it's she dated a family member or whatever.
Right.
I don't remember exactly.
There are a lot of people that interacted with the Zodiac without knowing it. I mean, the police in San Francisco were looking for him and talked to him, apparently, right? According to what he said and everything else.
Yeah, apparently at the park when right out where he murdered the taxi cab driver.
Right, Paul
and
Stein.
they had cordoned off the park, but they had a wrong sketch of who they thought it was, so they were stopping the wrong person, and so he was able to walk free. And I think they had the initial report that it was an African American, so they weren't looking for a young white guy. So it's just again, if you're a police on the beat and it's 2 a.m. or whatever time it was, and you've got to cordon off something as quick as possible and try to find that person, and you're looking for the wrong person. Mistakes are gonna happen. I can't fault the police on any of this.
No, come on.
It's God, these guys, the work that these guys do, and then to have to carry this from, just think how many chiefs of police for Riverside there has been that has had to deal with this. It's like, oh, you're the new Riverside police chief. Yeah, let's talk about the Zodiac again, because you're going to get called by the press once a month. You're going to get called by some guy who's going to want to see, they probably have a standard MO on dealing with all of this. And it's just, you're not going to break with that until somebody brings you a case that is so compelling that you barely even need the DNA before you'll even do it.
So there's 2 known survivors of killing attempts, and there's one kidnapped to be killed, but she escapes person. Right. So have you guys, and this is Johnny Consumer's question, Mike Mageau fingers Arthur Lee Allen, who we can't make the case work for him. It doesn't work. There's fatal flaws in the case with him. Every one of the Graysmith people, there's fatal flaws, right? They had every reason to be the person, but they weren't. So let's talk about the survivors, and have you had the opportunity to talk to any of them?
We have not, and that's just part of the ongoing piece. Is we've been working this for a long time, but there are still other pieces that are out there ready to go that we still need to reach out to again.
And again, I think the same thing applies. Mike Mageau is sick of talking about the worst night of his life.
Exactly, and that's the other thing. It's like he's getting bombarded as well.
Yeah, So in Benicia, where the landscape is, and Berryessa, not that far away, maybe 35, 40 minutes as a crow flies, if that. It's just not that far. Yeah. But he kills someone on Lake Herman Road, very dark, remote place that I drove by the last time I was in town. I drove by there. Right. And then if you turn the corner, you go to Blue Rock Springs. There used to be a little parking lot, super secluded. No one's out anywhere. It's a good place to make out. It used to be. This guy has access to Vallejo. That means he's got neighbors, and you guys must have tried to reach out to these neighbors, because Benicia Vallejo touch in so many different ways, not just physically. Like they're named after a general and his wife. I mean, this is a common place. Yeah. So, did you talk to any of the neighbors? Has anybody else said, "Yeah, that makes sense"?
We've talked to some people, like the neighbor across the street. She believes that it's him, but. Again, that's one of the differences between a cold case and a cold case that is this old, that even if somebody says they don't recognize them, it's like, that happened in the Cooper case. The flight attendant, is looking at our guy and just says, I don't recognize him. Well, she didn't recognize him a week or so after, after the event occurred, because it was a traumatic event for us. Like if she's not going to recognize somebody a week afterwards, she's not going to recognize somebody 50 years afterwards. So that's, when you get into cases this old, the witness testimony becomes more and more blurred, and you really have to go back to, really some of the more hard evidence pieces just to put it together.
Let's back up, just because, and there's a lot of stuff coming at us right here. So let's back up and talk about Jen Buchholz's initial piece, because you guys get on Zodiac. Yeah. It's been a cold case. People have been cracking for years. Talk about cryptography and talk about how we got Gary Poste's name. The
name was brought to us by one of the members of the posse, and it was, this guy came forward, contacted, brought it to Dale, our investigative reporter at the time working there, and he's basically told this guy, look, this is what I have, and his name is the cipher to breaking these letters. And so as Dale, did his initial work from it, he posted it. He put together as much evidence. Again, working almost singularly. Dale was working this initially by himself, and he got to the point where it's like, look, I can't do this anymore. Again, it was affecting his life as well. And so that's when he decided to pass it on. And Jen Buchholz ran into him at a place called CrimeCon, which is an annual event out in Las Vegas. It gets a huge pull of folks, especially from the West Coast area that wanted to be that just loved to get involved with this stuff. Most folks do it as a hobby. So they got together. He gave her all his information, which he essentially had put into a manuscript, almost ready to publish. And as she passed it on to me, I passed it on to Tom. And as we started reading through it again, it was just like very skeptical at first, because we had already been hit with a couple other, gray herring. Hey, you should do this case. It's just like, look, there's just nothing there for us. You got to have to do a cold case. You can't just start at the beginning of the case like everybody else had. Say, here's when the crimes happened. Now let's do all our hypotheses just like everybody else did, and try to piece this together. These cold cases don't get solved until somebody comes forward and gives you a star piece, that one star piece of evidence that's in the back end. And what you're doing is you're using it as your hypothesis, and you're working that backwards just to validate it. Like, is this the guy? And if the guy drops off and just said, look, we've got a fatal flaw, all right, we're done. There's no way this guy could be it. We're done. But we never found a fatal flaw with him. The more information we brought in, the more pieces that were getting put together. And they were actually going against some of our initial ideas of what we thought had happened, or who we thought this guy was. But again, we followed the evidence more clearly and talked to the right folks as we went. So I can't hear you.
A lot of awesome questions, a lot of incredible comments. I love it. If you guys could, hey, subscribe, and that would help me out. That would help make the show bigger and better. We've got over 1,000 episodes. Erik's been on a number of them. We talk about intel stuff. We talk about, we got an author who wrote a book. He wrote the most recent book about Eddie Van Halen's life with a bunch of compilation of stories, all kinds of great stuff. Ian,
I didn't write that.
No, you didn't. That's the next guy. I
was gonna say, it's like,
yeah. He's in a regularly scheduled show, not the holy crap, this is breaking. Yeah. So we have the problem of, like, there's no DNA, and you have star evidence you're talking about, so we can get to this DNA. And so is the star evidence the fact that the code is I guess not broken, because it was already kind of broken before, but rebroken and completely broken now? Yeah. Once we had Gary Post's name. Is there anything else that's star evidence that you guys have in your possession now? Yeah,
one thing is it's more than just to it's our first witness, who said that, look, I think this is a guy I've known my whole life, or most of my life. That was our first star piece that took a look at it. But the real key was using the name and looking at the cipher. And again, you can't just take a look at the letters themselves. You really got to look at every piece that he sent in, because there was pieces to the cipher on the outsides of the envelope. And a lot of code breakers don't know that. And that's part of the, again, as you're signing your name, there's different pieces that he's going to do that with. And he's using some standard, it's not standard code. I mean, they get more intricate and more difficult the more they go. But even after you translate those letters, he doesn't say anything other than throwing out teasers to the police and taunting them and things like that. Even the last one, the most difficult one, it was just some innocuous garbage about "you'll never catch me," ha ha ha, that kind of stuff. And but so the only really good piece of evidence with those letters is the fact that you're using this guy's name to break it. Right. And that just doesn't happen. When the guy signs his name in code on every letter consistently, then you got it.
One of the things I guess we have to go back and cover is, did the Zodiac stop killing, as far as you guys know?
Yes. Yeah. We think he stopped roughly around 1971, which is around the same time that he was married.
Do you think he wrote any of the subsequent Zodiac letters that came out later on that are sometimes associated with San Francisco?
Some yes, some no. Some of them are just taunts and copycats and that kind of thing. So.
Give real evidence. Some people just can't be pleased.
You know what though, and that's the thing. It's for a case this old, you're getting to the point where even if you had, if we had the ballistics, that would be fantastic. That if we had the DNA and it was in a complete match, that would be fantastic. Until we get that, this is still going to be an open case.
Yeah, right. It's going to be an open case, and it's hard to close a case that's that old. And Dominguez Hills, I think, is where those other kids were killed. There's all kinds of people out there that have been killed that have unsolved cases, and sometimes the police they fixate on the wrong person because they're desperate to try to get justice and closure for the family. Right. To the point where we had a medical examiner down here in Southern California, and this is a crazy thing. So when you're using semen samples as evidence, you need a control sample, and so often the MEs will use their own semen. And so there was cross-contamination, and a girl that was bludgeoned to death on the beach. Has nothing to do with the Zodiac, but this is how complex this stuff is. Girl's bludgeoned to death on the beach. They finger the ME in the office because his semen is found on the victim, and they're like, oh, you know what? It was cross-contamination. Sorry. Meanwhile, he killed himself. He's like, I didn't do this, and his life was destroyed. So we got to do these things right. I mean, Bill Cosby's out of jail because we didn't do it right. We can't just have an instant answer in something that's 60 plus years old in some cases. Yeah. So we got to deal with this right.
But again, that's why I go back to chain of custody, why that is so important, whether it's a ballot, the ballot box, or it's criminal evidence. You just can't go up and dig stuff up and just say, yeah, we think we solved it. Here it is. Boom. No, you need to have, a clear record of that this was not tampered with. This wasn't taken to a lab to try to alter the ballistics or put something else in there to make a cleaner match. There's all kinds of things that you can do to screw stuff up along the way. So when you do witness statements and circumstantial evidence, you're piecing a lot of stuff together that has to fit. But when you get to those hard things like the DNA, like you got to have it done exactly to the letter of the law and step by step.
Would you call the evidence from the dark room, the picture of him with the scars that match the sketches, would you call that circumstantial evidence? I
would. I mean, because it's, you can't say it's not it's not an eliminator for him, but it's also not something that say this definitively is his. We don't need, your hardest evidence is where you don't need any other evidence. This is it.
Let's briefly talk about your skills as an analyst in doing, not link analysis and all. You don't got to get super technical, but how qualified are you to make this call and put these things together? And Jen too, because she helps you with this stuff too.
Yeah. Well, that's, again, I have not worked in law enforcement except for the Cooper case for the last 10 years. I've done a lot of training for law enforcement, especially law enforcement intelligence analysts, doing things like threat profiling. And threat profiling is a method that I have. It's in my book, but it's a way to profile an entire group as opposed to profiling a single individual, like profiling a serial killer. So threat profiling is the method of looking at an entire group, but you can still use those same components. So you're still going to look at a person and look at it. Okay, what were this guy's motivations? What were his goals and objectives? Instead of a group of many, these guys were a group of one, or worked with a partner in some cases, or whatever. And so you're still using a lot of those same analytical techniques. They're foundational, so they're going to apply for criminal cases as much as they would apply to even a tactical military case.
Right. And just again, we got people that are questioning, and they should question. This is an old case. We thought we've had it solved a number of times. Sketches are known to be really bad. Eyewitness testimony is known to be really bad and put people to death on eyewitness testimony that proved to be false. So we have to go through the process. It's infuriating. I want to be able to say, yes, they've compared the evidence, the ballistics and everything else. But for the first time, we have an idea where these guns are. And it's just it's legal proceedings and the physical location that are slowing this down. Right. And these things,
right.
The sheriff there in the wooded area where the location is, I'm not trying to be obvious about it.
Yeah.
It's their job to do this, and you guys are going through the right steps.
Yeah. That's really all it is. And that's, the last thing you want to do is drop a dime on law enforcement because they're doing they're doing their jobs, and
Right.
they're getting pounded every day. And there's going to be a tendency for folks to be defensive and circle the wagons, just like, look, let's just bear through this. This news cycle will go away. We don't have to deal with this headache anymore. But at the same time, it's like we're really looking forward to working with law enforcement to finally do this. Every time you're going to do a cold case, especially if you're a private team like ourselves, you eventually have to hand that off to somebody in law enforcement. You just can't throw it out there. And again, we did that with the Cooper case. We handed somewhere up in the area of 1,800 pieces of evidence that we handed to the Bureau. Right. And said, look, this is what we got. By the way, we had his DNA too. And we sent that with it. But again, that's, you do what you can. You just can't come out and just say, we're going to try this guy in the court of public opinion and we're going to hang him. Now you're doing cold case mob rule. Every cold case that you're doing, no matter what your source is, whether you're a private team or you're an investigative team that's, that works for the city or whatever, eventually you got to hand that off to somebody who can do something about it.
Yeah. And I want to talk about the Posse because PJG is bringing up some great stuff and talking about that. But I want to back up to earlier, some more stuff on the Cipher. Yeah. As the Cipher came together with Gary Poste's name as the key, did you guys get anything else from the Ciphers that was unknown before, any evidential type things?
There are some pieces. I don't want to get into them because we're still looking at it, because there were some pieces that we think may have pointed him to the location of Donna Lass. So we're piecing those parts together. But again, it's the letters themselves are not helpful unless you can combine them with other pieces of evidence.
Right. They're just one piece of the puzzle. And then the Posse, have you reached out to the other Posse members?
Yes and no. That's, these guys have led troubled lives, during that whole time period. That doesn't go away, especially now once they've realized that, and these guys are having a tough time. These are your last victims, are the Posse. And this guy was, had a manipulative and overbearing presence on their entire lives, almost to the point where, and again, was he grooming killers? He was grooming them for something, and and they're going to be suffering the rest of their lives before that. These guys really do need, proper care now. That's, we've actually had one of our team members was taking care of one of the guys for 10 years because he was having troubles his whole life. I mean, that's, you don't recover from a lifetime of living with somebody like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to cover the negative stuff too much, you guys. I mean, I appreciate it. I
understand. It's like, you don't want to get into them. The last thing we want to do is to reveal these guys to the public and have their lives destroyed more than it's already been. So it's good. It's good to be skeptical of everything that I'm saying. We live on skepticism. That's what we need to do. So that's, we think that we have solved it based upon the evidence we've put together, but again, there's more to do.
And then you've also named the killer. This is not something that's minor, and I've not seen this name used before. I mean, I've seen lots of other, it was my dad, it was my uncle, lots of kind of speculation. Yeah. Graysmith names 7 different people, code names. Yeah. But you guys are giving us a new name that, as far as I know, is new to everybody. This is pretty important in the case.
Right. Because again, the name is the Cipher. That's the important piece.
Yeah, right. The name is the Cipher. What % right are you?
I'm going to give this, I am fairly confident. There was a point where I was like, look, if this guy didn't do it, OJ did it. But, again, and you can say that just from, as you get immersed in it over the last 2 years plus, you get immersed in that kind of work, but you still have to back yourself off and just say, look, we need to put the skepticism back in here. And we constantly do that. We're challenging each other as we're working with this constantly and how we approach it. And that's where it's like, I am confident all the way up to the point till, like everybody else, I want to see that final piece of the DNA and the ballistics to match, and go from there.
Let me just say this too, as a former spy. If I had a source like Erik, I would rate him as credible because he's proven credible in the past. He's cautious. He's being, he's saying, hey, if I walk into a two shop, and Erik will appreciate this, and I'm new to the area and we're in a combat zone, I'll say, you know, how accurate do you think your intel picture is? If they say a number anywhere north of 60%, they're not credible to me, because you can't know that much about an area. So you have to say, hey, there's a lot of things I don't know. We're going to learn more as we go along. You guys have learned more about the DB Cooper case since you broke that one.
Right.
I mean, these things change.
Right. You know, and again, there are people that still don't believe that he's him, you know, and that's fine. You know, you're not going to change. You know, we're not here to persuade anybody. We're just here to present. You know, and even the one, you know, again, we're also working Hoffa right now. We have a tip off on that one that we're looking at. Yeah. And, you know, that one I'm, you know, if I have to be skeptical on any of them, that's the one I'm more skeptical about.
And you and I talked offline. You've said that for a while. You've like,
yeah. And I grew up outside of Detroit. So when, after Hoffa disappeared, I remember that they went to my dad's school where he was a assistant principal, a middle school. And they had all the teachers go out to their cars and they popped all the trunks because they received a tip off that Hoffa's body was in there. You know, just again, and I was 8 years old and I knew that this was going on. You know, so that's the kind of, you know, we grew up with the Hoffa mystique, just like you grew up with the Zodiac mystique and the Cooper mystique out on the West Coast. So when we get a tip off like we do on Hoffa, I'm extremely skeptical on that one until, I mean, it's a good piece of evidence. It's a good spark or that star piece that allows us to then backtrack, and we're getting pieces put together on it. But until we get, you know, until we start breaking out the shovels, you know, I'll be the first one to jump on the hole and slap a sticker on it that says found by the cold case team. But, you know, that's, until then, nobody wants to go around opening more of Al Capone's vaults.
Right. With that said, you guys did try to get up to the mountains to grab the weapons cache. It just proved to be too rugged of an area for a bunch of older middle-aged.
And you know, even the path that they thought they were going up, the path had been destroyed over the years. So that's, again, it's, you know, deadfall and everything else. You know, the location was completely described to us from Will. Yeah. So we can still go up there and go get it. And it's a very small area that we'd have to do to search to look. We'll go up with metal detectors, all that kind of stuff. And we know that it was buried in a secure fashion. You know, it's not just somebody throwing it into the dirt and letting the rust and you know, the years take over. These were put up there so that they were that they were preserved. And you know, only a survivalist is going to do something like that.
Yeah, right. And they know how to do it. What about Gary's spouse? Is she still with us?
She is, but she is at the age where she's not proved to be as useful and again, that goes with 50, like I said earlier, and she's one of the people I was talking about, like 50 years after the fact. That's, you know, tough. And again, everything happened before they were married. So she's really dealing with everything that happened after he had stopped and the rest of his life. So, yeah,
that's a fair point too about the age of some of the people that are involved in this. Nobody's a young person anymore. I mean, if you were 18 and 69 and in Blue Rock Springs making out, you know, you're 70 now, and what condition your brain is kind of haphazard at best, right?
Well, I mean, think of the terror that Son of Sam called when when it came about that he was looking for young brunette co-eds to attack. Women were hiding their hair and, you know, in public, afraid to go out just because they didn't know who it was.
And that case is crazy because there's links to the occult, and I mean, and there's a whole documentary on Netflix, and you know, some of the stuff is sensational. But this is what you battle, though, Erik. You know, like as you guys go out there, like this guy's put together a case, he's putting evidence forward. You guys are doing the same thing,
right? And again, that's why I say this is This is more of a historical piece than anything else. You know, you're not looking at, you know, the forensic evidence anymore. Almost everything has been destroyed. You can't go back and really talk to the witnesses because their ability to remember things from 50, especially a traumatic events, has been just, you know, that gets destroyed over the years as well. And so, you're really putting together, when you're putting together a historical research, you're really trying to put together as much information as possible and then making your best assessment from that. And that's really what we're doing with the final caveat is like there is possible evidence out there that will either exonerate it or say that, hey, this isn't the guy for at least this murder.
Yeah. A good question about the other suspects. Did you cross compare these guys to some of the other? I mean, obviously you ran it up against Arthur Lee Allen, even though he failed the DNA test.
Well, those were easy because almost all of them had already been disproven by fatal, like you said, the fatal pieces. So we didn't have to spend too much time on it because we had yet to find. We were backtracking this piece of evidence from this guy coming forward. We were backtracking it, and we had yet to find a piece that said, no, he wasn't it. Every single thing we had found either was in line that said he was it and pointed right to him, or it just said, no, you're not going to get anything conclusive, but it dang sure didn't disqualify him.
I don't want to Dan makes a great point. I'm not trying to say if you're 70, your brain is haphazard. I'm saying that if you encounter someone who's 70 plus years old, you don't know what kind of damage they've had. And so to rely on somebody's evidence, you're entering into an unknown at a higher grade of frequency than you would with someone who's, say, 30 years old. I get it. I'm not saying anything denigrating.
And it's not the age of the person. It's the time from the event.
That's true.
And that's the thing. It's just you're things that you remember when you're 5 years old, boy, even at 20, you're going to remember them differently. But what things you remember when you're 30, 50 years later, that's going to, there's still things that I remember. My father was killed 39 years ago. There are things that I remember that are clear as a day to me, but may not have been exactly how it happened because I had already worked it in my mind of that event.
Great point from Larry Stallions here. If not 1,000% sure, why did you put the Poste family under the spotlight?
One, because he has passed away.
Okay.
That's really we wouldn't do anything like that unless he was already gone. And again, it's we're not talking about the family members because they're not really, right now they're at the point where they're no longer incidental or you can't just go badger them and they're going to remember stuff. It's
right.
And they're having their own troubles. So that's we're part of the reason is that we're looking for to get these folks help. And it's not just family members; it's members of the posse. So.
The neighbor of Poste said she believed it was him and brought his name forward, and the former posse member said it was also him. They used his name in the cipher.
Yeah, that's straight from the article.
Right. So. Yeah, you won't give it like if he didn't do it, then OJ did it. But you're pretty damn confident on this. What missing pieces out there that you guys are can you even speculate about what you guys are working on that's not fully developed yet?
About what?
Any evidence that's not fully developed that you guys have? Like,
No, I'm not. Yeah, there are some pieces here and there, but again, we came forward with this primarily because the big pieces have come to a standstill, and we really can't push forward unless we get some either support with a crew to go up to recover these weapons, and then somebody take a look at them, or support from the DNA. So it's just, again, that's our own skepticism. We can say that this is the guy that we think is him, but we're really done working this by and large until we're able to get some support from law enforcement and from other folks.
And then you said you've acquired some what you believe to be Gary Poste's DNA.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, that was acquired when he was incarcerated, when he was much older in his later years for domestic disputes. Anybody that gets incarcerated for that, they're by the mid 2000 teens, 2015, 2016, they're going to take your DNA.
A lot of questions about DNA. Arthur Lee Allen, his DNA is not the DNA that's on the backs of the stamps of the envelopes. Okay, fair enough, right? But if it's, then did he think ahead to have? Did he predict DNA evidence and have someone else lick his stamps? Because there's DNA in those envelopes. So
we think that he may even have had a tool within his home to set his own post dates on letters, so he can make a letter look like it had been mailed from one location because he could do it right within his house.
Oh, no kidding!
That was another piece that we were looking at. We're not again, that's based on a witness statement that says he saw that there and that he had the ability to do that. But we don't have the again, it's 50 years. So we don't have the physical evidence of that.
Do you think that thing still exists?
What, the post stamp?
Yeah.
No. I mean, he probably, that stuff just turns into junk after a while. Just like, oh, this isn't important, throw it away. I mean,
one of the things in the DB Cooper case that really broke it for me when you guys talked about it was that you guys had his parachute. I mean, that's an incredible piece of information.
That to me, again, and I was skeptical the entire time, years and years, I was skeptical, and that's, I first got the call. I was working on a government site, and I got the call from my buddy Tom, and it was late at night. I was working on a proposal, and first thing I said is like, last he goes, "Hey, I got this case. I need your help on it." I was like, I thought he was dead, and there's nope, he's alive, and he was living in San Diego, and this is what he's doing. I was incredibly skeptical, and then we started getting evidence, and we started getting folks talking to us about, I know the guy who picked him up after he landed. And this is where he landed, and this is where he walked out of the woods, and this is where the small engine aircraft picked him up. They flashed the lights. This is where then the plane took him, and then they switched planes, and then a vehicle picked him up, and he drove away into the nothingness. But so by using that information, we did send a team up in the woods. I think it was 2017, and they found two pieces of the parachute. One was if you look at the chute itself, there's a strap that's the tearaway strap in order to release to hold it in place as it's been packed. We found that piece, and then we found a piece of there's a padded backing tool. We found a piece of that. Both of those were handed over to the Bureau. And again, when you go up into the wilderness and you're looking at hundreds of thousands of miles of wilderness, there is no way you're going to find a piece of evidence like that unless everything that you've been doing up to that point is accurate. And so that validated the entire piece from when he landed to when he was picked up and when he disappeared, because our information all pointed to one location, and the team went up there and found that needle in a haystack. You just don't do that by wandering around the woods, by yourself.
The Cipher keeps coming up, and in the one critical piece of evidence, is it the Gary Poste name unlocking the Cipher? They think that
to me that was, again, that the witness that came forward, that was the first spark. The second piece where we stopped saying, no, this isn't worth our time, was being able to look at the key being the Cipher, and then all the other pieces. Again, what you're looking for in evidence at that point, when you're backtracking a single individual saying this is the guy, you're not looking for confirmation, you're looking for disqualifiers. And we didn't find a single one. In fact, we were finding stuff that was pointing back toward him more than we were finding anything that was close to a disqualifier. We weren't finding anything.
Hey, public, my mom used a dish rack to lick stamps. We'd still have the DNA
it's
on
those
it.
old dishes with the sponges.
It would have all your guys' DNA on it. Come on. Yeah, of course. Yes. But, it would come from his house. It would have his DNA. So that's part of the problem with the Arthur Lee Allen thing. As much as we want Arthur Lee Allen to be the guy, not the guy. Yeah. There's often a theory that it was a team. Did his posse do this with him? Did he have someone else, a spot or anything like that?
We don't believe that.
Okay.
No, and that's there's you would find other problem with the team is that's twice as many people that are going to talk. So it's so we believe that, again, how do you keep a secret when you're the only one who knows it? And right. I'm just saying this, saying that it's an obvious fact, but you're looking at you're looking at a guy that operated by himself. And his life afterwards, again, was, besides his posse, was relatively by himself as well, as a guy who consistently went out into the wilderness.
Rai is skeptical, so let's address this question here. No eyewitness said anything about a damned scar.
Actually, there was, and that's why it made the police sketch. Okay. There was, I think it was the Benicia. No, I'm sorry, he was wearing a hood then, but I can't remember who it was that had filled out the police sketch, but they had noted that there was a scar specifically over his right eye and then across his forehead.
Keep in mind, too,
it's in the police sketch like that.
These sketches are going to be tough because no one survives the Benicia killing. One person survives the Vallejo killing, but that's in the dark, in an unlit area. Right.
Right.
And he had a flashlight. So whatever he was able to see is going to be, hard to say. He had a mask on for the Benicia killings. So it's hard to, but you're talking about other people. What about the survivor of the kidnapping out by Stockton?
Right. Again, same thing. It's like he wasn't wearing a mask then, so that's, right. But again, was that the Zodiac Killer that links into all the rest? Just because you're able to, finger somebody on one case, you still can't just say, okay, if he's on one case, then he's all the rest. Each case has to be looked at individually. So all these pieces of information has to be in there. So, and that's why, again, when we were looking at the scar, we did run this by some of our police investigators before, and that was one of the things that they'd like, hey, this is a good match. That is actually something that you can use to, that we would use to further our investigation.
Yeah.
So,
is there anything else you want to cover? And we covered a lot of it. We covered it several times.
No, I mean, that's, case is still going on. There's all, it's one of those things where we're getting to the point where there's not a lot we can do, but we're still working it as much as we can. It's a great credit to the guys who did work this. I mean, we really did bring in folks from all over the country to take a look at this. And we had yet to have anybody bow out that just said, you guys are all smoking dope. In fact, the more folks that we brought in, the more folks that wanted to be included just said, hey, can I do this with you? Hey, oh, by the way, I got a guy who wants to volunteer service. He's a forensic psychologist, or he's a sociologist working out of such and such place. So
Robbie also not convinced, but that's okay though. We have this new name. We have a new pile of evidence, stuff we haven't seen or heard of before. We have a possible location on weapons. We have an improved result for the Cipher. We have a lot here, you guys. There's a lot of stuff going on. We have a name for someone, and now we can take this to the police departments at all, because there's a lot of them that have this case. This is funny. So one of the guys on the case from Benicia, his son was one of my best friends for a few years. This stuff hits really close to home.
It does.
And when you think about growing up as a kid, we drove on Lake Herman Road in part to scare the hell out of ourselves. Yeah. And sometimes we'd go out there and plan scares for our friends. But, the next letter was terrifying for us. The symbol being somewhere meant something to us, and it terrorized our community. So I, for one, even though I remain, look, I believe you because I know your information is going to be true, and you're not going to say this stuff halfway. You guys bringing out a name, you're not going to do that. But a lot of these folks don't know you like I do. But I too, I want to see the DNA evidence. I would love to have you guys actually find the weapon. Hopefully, it's out there.
Yeah,
people still aren't going to believe you.
I'm not here just beating a drum like this is it, this is it, this is it. All we're doing is saying this is what we have found. Yeah. That's you can't. We understand you can't go any further than that. That's the whole piece of it. I have to remain skeptical. We have to remain skeptical. If there is something that comes in that says, all right, this is disqualifier for such and such piece, then you move and say, okay, that one's disqualified.
Will you guys publish more stuff on the Cipher solution? Jeff Owens is asking that question. Great question.
I don't know. I'm gonna leave it up to Tom and the folks that are working that.
Yeah, and Tom is a pro too. Tom. There's a lot of professional people involved in this thing. Tom doesn't make money by getting stuff wrong. He makes money by putting these incredible people together and having more incredible people say, yeah, you're onto something here.
Well, yeah. And what he's doing is he's not doing it just so that he can say, I solved this case. He's really doing it because he has a vision of, all these cold cases that occur. We have folks who are interested, folks who can be mobilized and organized to do this kind of work. On their own, either on their own time or in their retirement. You've got police investigators that physically they're not busting down doors anymore, but they still have the ability to do investigations and to help work on some of these. There are cold cases in every state. Jen Buchholz is on her second case where she's looking into an area out of Laredo, Texas. That's why, again, if you had a team like this in every state that just pick these things up, there are so many cases that need to be solved, and they don't have to be these cold cases. They don't have to be the Jean-Benet Ramseys of Colorado, or reach that level. It's just somebody who's, a family who's suffering because their case has never been solved. And that's really what Tom's vision is. It's not to toot his own horn. It's not to, make a ton of money. That's not what we're here, but it's really to lay out that vision and build this kind of capability all over the place.
People are asking about the DB Cooper case. I know we're running long on time, and you have not slept because you guys have been working this thing so hard. Yeah. But can you talk a little bit about DB Cooper?
Oh, I lost you. You still there? I can see. I can't hear you.
I know. I'm coming back. Am I back now?
Yeah, you're back. You're good to go.
We unlocked my battery.
Oh, sorry.
No, but you're good. Hey, so talk a little bit about DB Cooper because people are asking about that. I'm going to put the link to DB Cooper in here in a second, and then let's wrap this thing. My jackery just ran out. That's how long we talked for.
Okay, all right. I mean, Cooper's another case. Best thing to take a look at is Tom Colbert's book, The Last Master Outlaw. He's coming out with another version of that adds, I think, 3 more chapters, and it's really a lot of what had happened since the first publication of the book in 2017 or 2018. He's been able to find an additional pieces of background on him. That's really, I would point folks to that book because it's a fantastic read. It is very readable. It's not a tough piece. So that's the easiest way to wrap that up very quickly is to point him toward Tom Colbert's book, The Last Master Outlaw.
And Tom has been on the show, so if you guys want to watch that, you can watch that. Here is the link to the DB Cooper episode. And hopefully some of you folks can appreciate that we've been trying to give you guys something that we didn't have before, an answer and a name to work on. I'd appreciate that Rai is invested in their person, and nothing wrong with that.
No.
There's a lot of people working on this thing. I think this is great, and I think you got the guy. I want to see the gun. I want to see the DNA. Yeah. Any idea when we'll have some breakthrough on those things, or is that completely out of your guys' control?
It's all at work. Most of it's out of our control. It's based upon how fast can you coordinate, how fast can you get it done, and everybody moves at their own pace. So,
Koski, yes, got to bring in all of the old names again. just to cover this one more time. Erik and his team have eliminated all of the Graysmith listed suspects.
Well, so, we didn't eliminate it. They were eliminated already before we started.
Okay, fair enough. Yes,
that's like, we didn't do that. Somebody else had already done that.
Right. We want it to be these guys, but it isn't these guys.
Yeah.
And the guy whose name fits into the cipher is the postman.
Yeah.
All right. Listen, I appreciate everybody. I appreciate everybody being here. We will have more on this. We'll get Tom on when Tom wants to come on. He's been on before, and we'll do this again. If you guys could subscribe, big help to me. Just that subscribe button. You'll get a lot of great content. Over 1,000 episodes. We talk about all kinds of stuff. Just a couple of weeks ago, Erik and I talked about terrorism in Afghanistan because it turns out Erik's really smart on terrorism, and combined between us, you got a lot of experience on this type of stuff. Anything you want to say in closing?
No, thanks for having me on. It's again work in progress, and we'll go from here.
All right, stand by. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank